Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm just going to make myself a bit louder. Welcome to the event. Kind of event today. I don't think we need Can you hear me better now? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Welcome everybody to Remembering Thomas Berger. Today's a chance for us to come together to tell some stories and to reflect on the impact that Thomas Berger has had as a judge, as a lawyer, as a human on our lives and the North. As I think everyone knows, Tom passed away last week, aged 88, after an incredible life. My name is Chris Ryder. For anyone who doesn't know me, I work as the Executive Director of CPAWS Yukon, and today's event was put together by our organisation and the Yukon Conservation Society. I'd like to do a very quick land acknowledgement. I'm incredibly grateful to be here today on the traditional territory of Pangman First Nation and Whitehorse Council. And I see Chief Bill is here, and Gwitchin for allowing us to have this event on your traditional territory. It is to be here and to be remembering Tom today. I'm just going to do a few ground rules, and then Ruth Carol is going to do an opening first. Just like to invite everyone to continue to follow the Safe 6+1. I can see everyone is already maintaining distance and wearing your masks, and so I thank you for that, and appreciate everyone continuing to be safe as we still work through this pandemic. We do have some spare masks and sanitizer available over there if anyone needs it. So with that, I'd like to invite Ruth Carol up to say a prayer. This is your Ruth.
Thank you. I'm very thankful that you can all make it here today. I'm sure there's many more. But due to COVID, it's very difficult these days to get together and do what we normally do. And can you hear me? Good. Okay. I can only get carried away, but I'll do my prayer and I'll say a few words and that's it. My name is Ruth Carol, my husband Martin sitting over there, and we've been involved in different areas all our lives, like everybody else. But during the time that Judge Thomas Berger was traveling, all the young people became involved. And still today, now their children are also in taking part in leadership and doing what they can to make our part of the world better and continue to stay safe and good for us to live on. So I'll just do the prayer and then I'll have a few words to say. sak nokwa inli. Whitley and Joe, Whitley and the Cheif at that like equada, book Na-Cho, Hwëch'in, Kenchit, Net's. Our loving Heavenly Father, we thank you this day for this beautiful day here in the north. Lord, we come before you this day, asking you to continue to help all those who are grieving at this time for a very well-known man who has come into our lives and made big changes for us across the north and wherever he worked in BC and in Canada, Alaska. We thank you that he has done his job well. He's a very good example for all of us to follow. Today we remember his wife, his children. We pray for Mrs. Berger and the children, Aaron, David, grandkids, Goldie, Boris, Gracie, that you will be with them as they mourn the loss of this great man. I thank you for the work that is being done around the world for protection of our land, our animals, our water, clean air. I thank you for the work that CPAWS is doing here in the Yukon and all the people that are doing similar work to keep our land safe. Pray that everybody continue to do the good work that they are doing. And pray that you will continue to be with everyone that's mourning. But for the youth, I pray that many will continue what is being done today. Help others care for not only themselves, but for the whole world, neighbors. We pray that will be with each one of us as we take our turn to speak this day. We pray for all those again, especially older people who have known Justice Berger. Those that are in Vancouver at this time. Pray that you continue to be all of them, that they will continue to follow in the footsteps of Tom. We pray in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. When I was still living in Fort McPherson, I went to school and I'm tough-headed. I was in residential school 9 years, but I managed to keep my language. And every time little jobs come up, people would ask me to do it. So I was helping around McPherson, and Berger Inquiry was coming up, and people in charge were beginning to prepare and doing all kinds of work there. And they asked me to go to Here River. There was a meeting there. So I went, and it was a planning meeting, and it was a bunch of people like myself, and First Nations, and I think we had Inuvialuit with us as well. And we had, they prepared us to go into the communities as field workers. So that's exactly what we did. We went back to our communities with maps, the place where the pipeline is supposed to be laid, and all that kind of information. All the information about big projects, big companies coming in, working in areas, and how it could be beneficial for the people there, or how it could hurt the people there. So all this information we took back to the communities, and that was what I was doing in Fort McPherson. I also went to Klavik and Nuvik and Sigechik. So that's what I was doing. So and in all other areas, people were doing the same thing. And so pretty soon when Thomas Berger came, everybody was ready. And way before he came, CBC radio was just buzzing with all the elders, a lot of elders were speaking up about the land that they raised their families on, their hunting areas, everything. And they were really very strong in their words, saying that we don't want no pipeline. We don't want nobody working on this land and wrecking our way of life. And so that's what he got to hurt when he came into the communities. Everybody had those great words to share with him. I remember elders going up, and there was interpreters there, and they did all that job. A lot of great people worked. There was people working on CBC, interpreters, and a lot of them are no longer with us. And so that great job that Judge Berger began continues today. And we hear so much today about reconciliation. Tom Berger is the best example of reconciliation. He allowed our people to talk. He allowed our people to say what was on their mind without fear. And he did not say to anybody that, no, you can't say that. You can't do this. Do it this way. That kind of crap. Nothing. But we're really thankful that he taught our people to be themselves again. And today, I see a lot of them, 2 of them standing right there all over the place. There's people that are very outspoken and people that can say anything and do anything that they put their minds to. I really, really hope that our youth will continue to know this great man and all of you. I'm not saying that you're it and you're not. There's some great people standing around here helping us, and CPAWS. Again, I just want to thank you for doing the work that you are doing and including some of us from time to time. I know your heart is in the right place. I know with you people working there, helping us along, we still have a long ways to go, but we know that everything can be done when we put our minds to it. We do have some things that's in the way from time to time. We have a lot of things going on today, but we also believe. I know the Gwitchin people, they have the Bible in the language, so our people taught us, our elders taught us, and so we believe somebody else is looking after us. And so we always, that's how we work. And it's not only the Gwitchin, there's other First Nations and other people that are here with us. We can make it, and today we really thank Tom Berger from the bottom of our hearts for all that he has done for us. I just talked to Norma not too long ago. She couldn't make it, Norma Cassie. She's in a meeting right now, and because of that she can't be here with us. Norma too wants to say thank you to Thomas Berger for all the work that he has done helping us with the porcupine caribou issues in the north, the entire north, the Arctic, and it's not just a pipeline, it's a Peel River, watershed, everything. But you're going to hear more about it from experts pretty soon, so I better get away from here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for loving Tom Berger. Merci.
Merci, Ruth. We're so grateful for you being here to say those important words. So just a few very quick logistics. Joti, who is standing over there, has a speakers list. And so if you'd like to say a few words, I encourage you to go and give your name to Joti, and she'll take it down and will allow as many people as possible to have a chance to reflect. On that note, we really appreciate if everyone can try and keep reflections, your thoughts, your stories, as brief as possible. I know that sometimes you will need some time, but that way we can have the opportunity for as many people as possible to speak. And the last thing is, once you have had a chance to speak, I would really appreciate if you just hand the microphone back to me when you're done so that I can make sure that gets sanitized for the next person. So today we've come together to think about Tom, and I feel incredibly privileged to have had the chance to get to know Tom a little bit through the Peel Watershed legal case. As most of you know, Tom was our lawyer. CPAWS and the Yukon Conservation Society, together with Vuntut Gwitchin First Nation, the First Nation of Na-Cho and Gwitchin First Nation. And at the very beginning of that case, Tom understood how that needed to proceed in a way that I think no one else probably would have seen. Everyone else was looking at that case thinking, there's a problem with consultation. There wasn't enough consultation. And Tom, being the brilliant legal mind he was, he looked at it and he said, I don't think that's the problem. If we go to the court and we talk about consultation, Yukon government's just going to come back and they're going to do their consultation and then they're going to say, it's done, you won, but we'll go back to exactly where we started. And so he had the foresight and the brilliant mind to look at this and go, this is a problem with process, and we need to take this through on the circumstances of process. And from the very beginning, he knew that that case was going to go to the Supreme Court of Canada, and he knew that we were going to win. And I just find that incredible. I also just really quickly want to reflect on the sacrifices that Tom made through his life, advocating for reconciliation and for the right thing to be done. In the early 1980s, after the Berger Inquiry was complete, Tom, who was a judge at the time, wrote an op-ed in the Globe and Mail, and he spoke in that Globe and Mail about the need for the Canadian Charter to respect the rights and the unique rights of First Nations people, and the rights of Inuit and Métis people, of course. And at that time, this was considered a controversial statement. And he was forced to step down from his position as a judge. But he was someone who was principled enough to make that sacrifice. And while we still have a long way to go, I think it's incredible to see the way that the world has caught up to Tom 40 years ago. And I hope to see the journey continue and Tom's legacy continue over the next 40 years. And I can tell you that if I can have 1/10 of the impact that Tom had, I will consider my life have been one that's well lived. The last thing I will say as well is if at age 85, if I can look half as good in a fedora as Tom looked, I will also feel like I did really well with my life. I'd like to introduce Lewis, one of the co-hosts. It's weird to say a co-host for something like this, but I don't have a better word. But Lewis from the Yukon Conservation Society, one of the co-organizers of today's celebration of Tom's life.
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out, as well as Chris is being a bit modest. CPAWS did most of the heavy lifting on organising this event, so we'd like to thank them. Thank you. The current staff and board of YCS were very saddened to learn of the passing of Thomas Berger. He'll be remembered in the North for many things, but especially for his role as the Royal Commissioner of the Mackenzie Valley Pipeline Inquiry in the 1970s. The result of that inquiry actually was we did not get a pipeline across the northern Yukon, and it's thanks to his work to that did not occur. More recently, of course, he was the lead lawyer on the whole Peel Watershed case, and we all know how successful that was. YCS extends its deepest condolences to his family and colleagues, and his legacy of environmental protection in the Yukon and beyond will long be honoured by us. The executive director of YCS who worked with Thomas Berger was Christina MacDonald. She has since moved on to a position out east, and she has sent us this email that she would like to be read to everyone. Greetings from Halifax, Nova Scotia. I wish I could be with you in person to remember Tom and celebrate what he helped us to accomplish together. The 3-year Peel Watershed legal case was one of the most powerful and influential periods of my life. When I think back on that time, Tom is a constant and vivid presence. I remember his gentle chuckle, his careful listening, and the sense that when he spoke, he was weaving together the wisdom from many sources and calling us all to step into our responsibilities to care for one another and the land and the water. Tom gave a voice to the spirit of the Peel Watershed, and I'll always carry that spirit with me. Sending my love to everyone. Christina MacDonald. Thank you.
It's my privilege to now invite Chief Doris Bill to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all here. I tried to figure out what to say about this incredible man. I think he was a master at consultation, is what he was. I was a young girl many, many years ago in living in Inuvik at the time when Berger was making his rounds through the community. And one of the things that I noticed about him was that he talked to everybody. He talked to absolutely everybody. He went to the small people in the small cabins to sit down and have a cup of tea with them to talk about their views. And what he really did was give people a voice. He gave Northerners a voice. And he also changed the way people viewed the North. Before the Berger Inquiry, I recall many articles and many people who spoke about the North had this romanticized view of what the North was. And he really opened that up and really gave the Southern folks a real good look into the lives of Northerners and what the realities of the North really were. His rulings are so significant that they will live on for decades. We will be using his precedents for decades to come. But his time here on Earth will really resonate with Northerners for much longer. And I spoke to him one time, and we were talking about his time in the Mackenzie Valley. And, I thought, this man is really humble. He's so incredibly humble that he almost, the impact that he made on our lives was, it was almost lost on him, I thought. But he didn't understand at the time what an incredible impact that he made for the people of the North. So we owe him an incredible amount of gratitude and thanks, and I believe this is something that should be taught in the schools because it's really part of our history. And we should really understand who this man is and what he has done for the North. And I just want to extend my deepest condolences to his family and to the people that were closest to him. And I know there were many, over the years, there were many, many people that really got to know this man. And I just want to thank that on behalf of everyone, on behalf of the leaders, just thank him for all he has done to advance Indigenous rights and to advance, you know, the views of the North, to advance our people, to advance everything that he's done to advance our rights. Ganas Cheif Masicho Shoni Fan. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Lorraine Netro to say a few words.
Masicho Drin Gwinzi Shalakat Shori Lorraine Netro Valji Vuntut Gwitchin Gwitchin Juk Drin Jat Noha Hicklien Jet Hike Chono Jinunza Juk Yan Tien Jet Chitnelly Doris Bill Gonan Kak Kak Jat Noha Hicklien Jet Masicho no Jinu. My name is Lorraine Netro. I'm from the Vuntut Gwitchin First Nation. I'd like to first of all say Masicho for being here with all of you today, and to acknowledge Chief Doris Bill, and I see Chief Christina King. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on their traditional territory, and thank you for allowing us to be here and to remember our dear friends. There were two very dear friends that passed away last week. It was a very, very difficult, sad time. Chief Justice Berger and Adam Colton. They really had huge influence with the Gwitchin people in the North. As our elder Ruth said, I want to thank Ruth for her prayers and for her strong words. I just wanted to share that when the Berger Inquiry was taking place, I was a young woman in my community. I sat in that old log-built school, and there was that room was just filled with people, mostly from our community, and all of our esteemed elders. We were surrounded by our esteemed elders and trying to understand what was taking place in front of us, in front of me. So as I listened to our elders speak, I became very, very afraid. I became afraid for our life. And how afraid our elders were for our future generations. I think that was my very first time that I attempted public speaking. I stood there shaking in my boots, and yet I wanted to share my voice. And as I looked at this person that I was speaking to and the 50 or so people that were sitting with him, I didn't realize that we were actually speaking to the rest of the world about how important it was to protect our way of life, to protect who we are as a people. And he went on to have such an influence and He was such a change maker that impacted all of our people in the north. And for that today, I'd like to say Na-Cho to Justice Berger and send our love and prayers to his family. And I'd just like to make sure I remember our dear friend and colleague, Adam Colton. He was the executive director of Alaska Wilderness League in the office in Washington, D.C. Adam, too, was such an influence with the Gwitchin people and the Gwitchin nation. He walked with us as a people. He fought with us as a people. And this is such a, just reflecting over the last week. These two giants of a men had such humble, true, and strong values. And that they stood with us as a people because they believed that we mattered. The way I remembered them is that they walked the ancient trails of the Gwitchin people. They walked the ancient trails of Vuntut, caribou. They sat and had tea and bannock and traditional food with our esteemed elders and all of our past leaders. And how beautiful is that? And so today, our hearts, my heart is sad. And yet, I'm so grateful and blessed to have known them and walked beside them. So, Na-Cho, and I just give you all thanks for today.
I'd like to introduce Mary Whitley.
Hello, I'm Mary Whitley, and I'm a past president of the Yukon Conservation Society. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Kwanlin and the Gwitchin people. And other speakers have introduced themselves by the association they had with their First Nation. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm of the tribe of the colonizers. And we've been allowed onto the territories of the First Nations for generations. I'd like to remember Thomas Berger at an event that was held here many years ago to remember Mike Dane, who was the executive director of CPAWS. He passed away during the Peel process and he never saw it to its end. But there was a memorial celebration for him, which I attended. And when we all sat down at the table, I ended up at the same table as Thomas Berger. I didn't know him as a person. I knew him as a personage. And after the meal was over, people came up to him and took his hand and shook his hand and looked him in the eye. These are elders, presumably from the people living in the Mackenzie Delta. These elders took his hand, looked him in the eye, and shook his hand and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," over and over again. And they were recognizing his part in protecting the Peel. And it was an emotional experience for me to see how these people respected Thomas Berger. And as if I needed more proof that he was respected. Those people were showing me how much they respected me. And I'm proud to have this T-shirt, which Thomas Berger signed when I retired as president of YCS. So I have Thomas Berger's signature on my T-shirt.
Before our next speaker, I'd just like to read a short statement from Vuntut Gwitchin Chief Dana Tizya-Tramm. Chief Dana says, "We have lost a true legend and a friend of the Vuntut Gwitchin. Some say Mr. Berger has done more for Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples than anyone else. He's championed land claims through the Berger Inquiry and supported the implementation of land use planning in representing our nations in the Peel court case. The impact Mr. Berger had on the relationship between the Crown and Northern Indigenous nations is reflected in the Vuntut land claim and self-government agreements. Our nation thanks the Berger family for their sacrifice and will always remember Mr. Berger fondly for his time spent in Oak Grove, truly listening to our people." And I'd like to invite Gill Cracknell, who is next on the list, to say a few words. And while Gill comes up, just a quick reminder that Joti, wearing the love mask, is maintaining the list. So if you'd like to say a few words, please do go and ask her to put your name on there.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody, and to YCS and CPAWS for organising this. It was the honour. I'm Gill Cracknell. I had the honour to work with Tom on the Peel legal case for many years, and we all know he was a remarkable man, and that few people leave this earth in a better place in such a profound and far-reaching way as Tom Berger did. And for me, what really sits with me today is the way he did it. Because as we've heard from so many people, he had this kind, compassionate soul, and he knew how to connect with people. And that was the hallmark, of course, of his Mackenzie Valley Pipeline Inquiry work and also his Peel work, because as we've heard, he didn't just sign off lands and peoples that he had no inkling about. No, he went to the fish camps and he listened to people because he wanted to embody the information that would inform his recommendations and his arguments and his decisions. He wanted to feel it from the side of the people who lived there and who lived this experience on the land. He understood that connection. He was that connection, and he has created that connection for all of us here in the Yukon. That's my profound belief. Because he's changed the landscape of power in the Yukon for the better. And for that, I think we can all be forever grateful. And I just want to point out something that I think is just remarkable, because he was so humble and unpretentious. He could talk to ordinary folks like me and make us feel comfortable. And yet he had this tremendous ability, this thundering performance, command performances in court that he could bring on. And if you've ever been on the other end of a telephone with Tom Berger when he's upset about something, you'll know what I mean, because he had this vision and this focus. And if something looked like it was going to derail his argument, he was not happy. And things had to change. So that's the man I remember, an extraordinary man who I was so fortunate. It was the honor of my life to work with him. And we are forever better and grateful for the work that he did. And I just thank everybody here. Thank you.
I'll just read a quick statement from Chief Simon Mervyn of the First Nation of Na-Cho Nyäk. I've got Clorox on all of these papers, so you'll have to forgive me. The people of Na-Cho Nyäk are deeply saddened by the departure of our good friend Thomas Berger. It was just over 4 years ago that we had the honour of witnessing his brilliance as he fought for the Peel Watershed before the Supreme Court of Canada. He seemed almost immortal. We heard our hearts and souls echo in the words that he spoke. I guess we'll have to find a new champion to defend the Northern Shoshone Land Use Plan. Tom changed our world in profound ways that will never be forgotten. Our deepest condolences go out to his family and to his friends. We have lost a mountain of a man. I'll now invite Joti to come up and say a few words. And after she said some words, if you want to be on the list, please see her.
Thanks, Chris. I'm just going to be brief because everyone else has done such a beautiful job of speaking about Tom and sending out my love to his family and his colleagues and everyone he's connected to, and just to share my gratitude for everything that he's done and for me to have been able to be a part of that, specifically with the Peel, and so grateful for his strength and vision that we were all be able to unite behind, and which brought so many of us together, which I'll be eternally grateful for. I have the honor of being able to read something that was sent to us by Margaret Rosling. Some of you may know her by Margie. She worked alongside Tom for over 25 years and was equally passionate and connected. If you ever met her, she was so warm and energetic. She's very heartbroken about having to say goodbye to Tom. He was very strong right up until the end, so it was actually a bit of a surprise in the end, and she really wanted to be here with us, so she was really super grateful that we could read this out. So just give me a sec. Good afternoon, everyone. People of Yukon, friends of Tom Berger. I would like to start by thanking our good friends at CPAWS for organizing this tribute to Tom and for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words about my colleague and dear, dear friend, Tom Berger. I worked closely with Tom for 25 years and had the privilege, along with Micah Clark of our firm, of being counsel with him on the Peel Watershed case. I wish I could be here with you today as you gather in this special place to remember this great man. Although I can't see you, I can imagine that I would recognize many of you, because you were there with us throughout our journey on the Peel. Tom's accomplishments and his contribution to the advancement of Indigenous rights are legendary. The impact of his legacy are especially felt in the North. And after his passing last week, Bob Ray, Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, said of Tom, "No non-Indigenous person has done more to advance the rights of Indigenous people in Canada and globally. He inspired thousands and enlightened millions." And I couldn't agree more, says Margie. His journey started with the Calder case, where Tom, on behalf of the Nisga'a Nation, claimed that the Nisga'a still owned their lands and had never surrendered their title. Many lawyers in Canada were skeptical, but as it turned out, Tom was right, and the Calder case became the starting point for what are now well-established legal principles for Indigenous rights to land. As you all know well, shortly after the Calder case was decided by the Supreme Court of Canada, Tom was appointed Inquiry Commissioner to what became known as the Berger Commission. Tom's unique approach to conducting the inquiry by traveling, experiencing listening, learning, changed the course of our country. His work started a process which resulted in the 1993 settlement of Yukon First Nations land claims under the Umbrella Final Agreement, which, as Tom observed, provided the means of progress towards social and economic stability in Yukon. More recently, in 2010, Mike Dane of CPAWS and Karen Balt-Galis of Yukon Conservation Society came to see Tom about the challenges with the Peel Watershed land use planning process. The rest, as they say, is history. When we launched the Peel case in 2014, Tom referred to the case as a lawsuit that nobody wanted to bring. But, as he said at the time, the government of Yukon forced the First Nations, CPAWS and YCS, to go to court in defense of the First Nations' rights and environmental values in Yukon, and to uphold the principles entrenched in the Constitution of our country. Tom worked tirelessly on the case until we finally made our way to Ottawa, to the Supreme Court of Canada, where he argued the case with many of you there to witness that historic event. We got to the Supreme Court and won, due in no small part to Tom's dedication to Indigenous rights, his deeply held belief that you had to fight to do what is right, and his brilliant legal mind and tenacity. Tom had incomparable work ethic. He did not know the meaning of the word procrastination. All these qualities contributed to Tom's success as a lawyer, an advocate, a commissioner, and a judge. But I believe that his success was also attributable to his other more human qualities. He was a really, really nice man. He listened, he took time to understand, he cared, he was kind. He loved and cherished his wife, Beverly, their children, Aaron and David, and their three grandchildren. He didn't know the meaning of the word retirement. He worked tirelessly up until weeks before his death, and at 87, made what was to be his final court appearance in December of last year. Because of Tom, the principles of Indigenous rights to land and protecting the land are part of the Constitution of our country and well grounded in law. Because of Tom and his legacy, we will all continue to advance these rights. If you are all feeling a deep sense of loss at Tom's passing, please accept the heartfelt condolences to all of you from all members of our law firm. We have lost a great man and a constant presence here in Yukon. But as I reflect on my time with Tom and his legendary accomplishments, I mostly feel a deep sense of gratitude that I lived during the time that Tom Berger transformed Indigenous rights in Canada. Many of you, your elders and family members, lived during the time of the Berger Commission and the time afterward during the negotiation of the Umbrella Final Agreement. All of you lived during the time of the Peel Watershed case and were with us every step of the way. We lived in the time of Tom Berger. Lucky us.
Mary to come up on stage, whatever this is. The ground.
I'm Mary Amerongen, and I'm a settler person from Alberta 20 years ago. Justice Berger didn't just go to the 35 communities in the north, he also came south. He brought his hearings south, and he inspired a bunch of us. We formed a coalition. We were First Nation people, environment people, church denominations, a political party, unions, and we were in solidarity with the Dene of the North. Not to help, but in solidarity because we had a common interest. We didn't want to be part of a country that would, in our names, impose a pipeline on people who didn't want it. Justice Berger was going to speak at an industry conference called Conference on Energy and Northern Development. And that was by the pipeline proponents who had organized that. And he was speaking there. And we decided to have a citizens counter-conference on energy and northern development. And we invited Dene leaders to use our conference as a forum in the South. And George Erasmus, George Barnaby, Frank Cellier, Gary Firth, all came and spoke at our conference over 4 days. And Justice Berger spoke in the daytime at the industry conference, and we saw it on TV, and he's in his formal clothing, and everybody's pretty stiff listening to him, and he's pretty stiff. And then he spoke in the evening at our conference. We had 400 or 500 people in a church basement, and he's taken off his jacket, and we're hanging on his every word, and he's relaxed. The coalition that he inspired continued to work for several years. Education and advocacy that there should be a moratorium on the pipeline. We spoke to our MPs and MPs across Canada. I'd like to quote from the epilogue to the Berger report, because it inspires me now. Oh, I'm inspired now by two things. One is what a Lushu woman, whose name I have forgotten, I'm sorry, speaking to Berger, she said, when they tear up the land, they're tearing up my flesh. And that has stayed with me ever since. And this quote is for us now. This is Justice Berger speaking in the epilogue to his report. He says, the native people are raising profound questions. They are challenging the economic religion of our time, the belief in an ever-expanding cycle of growth and consumption. And of course, this is 100% relevant today. Thank you.
I'll now read a quick statement from Chief Roberta Joseph of Gwitchin First Nation. Thomas Berger redefined Canada's relationship with the North. He fought every battle worth fighting, and the Gwitchin are honoured he agreed to represent our Northern Yukon First Nations in the Supreme Court of Canada. His legal expertise was admirable. His personal integrity was a great comfort. We have lost a friend. Thomas Berger and his contributions will be remembered by Gwitchin for generations. And now I'd like to invite Amber Church to come and say a few words.
So I think I, for my entire life, knew of Tom. My parents were in the NWT when the Berger Inquiry took place, and my dad testified in front of him. And so he was sort of this icon in my mind all the time growing up. And so the opportunity to work with him on the Peel case for so long was an amazing privilege. Since that time, people have asked me what it was like to work with Tom, and the best description I have for it is, if you can imagine idolizing your grandfather, that's a bit what it was like being with Tom, because although he was this incredible force of nature in the courtroom, he was also just this incredibly kind and loving man. And I guess the best story to articulate it is during the Yukon Supreme Court case. Tom had been in the courtroom all day long, was kicking ass in the courtroom, and the session wrapped up, and I was taking him to dinner, driving him to dinner, and we went out to my car, and I realized as we were approaching my car that I hadn't cleaned my car at all, and the front seat was full of sports equipment and kinds of things, and Tom was sitting there bemusively watching me like chuck stuff in the back seat so he had somewhere to sit. And got him in the car and sat down, and he went to do up his seatbelt, and it hit me as he grabbed the seatbelt that our new dog had chewed the seatbelt 2 days before. And Tom held this seatbelt and looked at me with like that stern grandfather stare, which I'm sure you all have some memory of from a grandparent. And I looked at him very sheepishly and explained what had happened, and he said, "All right, dear, here's what's going to happen. You and I, we're driving to the car dealership right now, and we're making an appointment to get this fixed. Because I can't do my job properly if I'm worrying about you and Tyler flying through the windshield." And so we went to the car dealership, and I made an appointment for my seatbelt, and then, and only then, would he let me take him to dinner. So I feel like that, everyone's spoken to Tom's amazing impact on the world, but I think that's a little glimpse of Tom's amazing impact on me. Thanks.
The next person is Joe Pangman. Please come on up, Joe.
Hi there. I just thought I'd talk. I was chair of the CPAWS board for 10 years of the Peel campaign from 2005 to 15, and then interim executive director between Jill and Chris. And so it was very exciting, you know, to see the campaign evolve, and Mike Dane having the inspiration to call Tom out of the blue, having never met him, saying, "By the way, would you have any interest in possibly taking on this case?" And when Mike passed away a few years later, Tom and Margie flew up to be at his memorial at their own expense, I think out of respect for him and for CPAWS and everybody that was involved with the court proceedings. And that was a touch of the humanity in Tom that he would do that. And you know, as Jill, having sat in on a number of the conference calls and calls with him to discuss different aspects of the campaign and the various trials through the court system, I think one of my lingering memories of Tom was going through all the different court processes and sitting in the back of the room and watching. Of course, in the first court case in the Yukon here, it was a 4-day event, and it was very slow and tedious, shall we say, because so many different minutiae of the campaign had to be brought to the fore. And all of these people had come down from the communities. A lot of the elders were there, you know, from as far away as McPherson and Inuvik and obviously Old Crow and Mayo and Dawson had come down, and I'd be thinking of them listening to this legalese, you know, this land, this incredible land that they and that so many of us had such a connection to, was not even being talked about in the court case, really. It was about the legal minutiae of how Tom felt he had a chance to win the case. And yet their dedication to come down and sit through hour and after hour of these proceedings, and there was long gaps at times, and Tom, you'd almost wonder, did he actually fall asleep? You know, because there'd be these long pauses. And it was, but of course, then he'd come out with this statement that everybody would, you know, shudder and think, oh, no, he's not asleep. He's finding just the right moment to put that bit of information in. You know, and then the next court case here, you know, it was a little bit shorter. It was getting closer. It was the appeal. And then going all the way to Ottawa, and just seeing him in action in there with the 9 judges lined up on the front panel, and the way that, and he didn't have very long. We're only in there for about half a day, if I remember correctly. And and we had a water ceremony put on by the local Indigenous people on the steps of the courthouse that morning with the wind howling. It was bitterly cold, and he was there for that. And then the court case itself, and just seeing how he would just choose his words. And again, there'd be these like pregnant pauses, and then he'd come out with something, and he would it was just quite amazing to see him in action, and obviously a master at his field, and you know, something that we'll be forever grateful for, that he had that capacity and that he was willing to take on, you know, the Peel case. He saw the value of it, both from the Indigenous rights perspective and the value of the land itself. All right.
last person on the list for today is Matthew Lien. Please come and say a few words, Matthew.
Masicho, I did not intend to speak today. I came rather to support so many dear friends who I know have lost a colleague, and more than one, Adam, as well as Tom. It's been an honor in my time as a kind of an activist and musician to stand alongside so many of you for whom Adam and Tom were really instrumental in accomplishing important achievements. But I wanted to share a story with you that, you know, of all the places, the rivers I've traveled and the concerts we've had and all the lobbying we've done, I remember being in Washington, D.C. on one of the ends of one of our long sort of performance and lobbying travels, and there we were, you know, at the base of the Capitol, and we had arranged a small event just around the corner in a little, I think it was a Legion Hall or something. It had that really cheap, you know, artificial wood paneling and wall-to-wall carpeting that was long in need of being changed, and that was our venue. And I mean, this place was literally in the shadow of the Capitol, and I was listening to the Gwitchin experience being shared of caribou running by the tent and heading off to this mysterious camping grounds, and watching someone coming all the way from Old Crow to this weird place, and in the shadow of such power and might, telling the story to us in this humble room, we the already converted, you know. It was such a sort of a David and Goliath. I was looking for a gender equity version of that, but a Danielle and Goliath situation. But you know, it was people like Adam and Tom that brought power down to a point where truth could accomplish something important. And that is why I'm here today, because I'm not lucky to know them in such a personal way. I'm lucky to know you as a friend who have known those people in such a personal way and accomplished such greatness. So thank you, Masicho. Cheese, Shonithan.
I just thought I would close with one final reflection on Tom, which was the time when the Supreme Court of Canada ruling came out. Christina MacDonald, Chief Joseph, Chief Mervyn, and Chief Charlie had all travelled to Ottawa together with Margie, Rosling, and Micah to hear the result come out. And we were in a panic at this hotel in Ottawa. We were all just so scared about what the result would be. Margie and Micah, I think just as much as us, were just like, oh, I hope this is a good result, I hope this is a good result. Unfortunately, Tom had been a little bit too ill to travel, so he was back in Vancouver. And the nerves in that room were palpable. And then we got the ruling from the Supreme Court of Canada. And the thing I remember about Tom was we got him on the phone, and while we'd been basically spending this hours and hours panicking, just sweating, shaking, and we got Tom on the phone. He was like, well, of course we won. He never had a doubt. He knew from the very moment that that case started that he was going to win that. I think it would be maybe appropriate for us to end this event with a minute of quiet reflection. As Lorraine and Matthew have mentioned, we lost not only our friend Thomas Berger, but we also lost a good friend, Adam Colton, from the Alaska Wilderness League, a true giant among people, and someone who has had a huge influence on the Arctic Refuge in Alaska and has been campaigning on that for decades. And so I would invite everyone to take me to join me for a moment of reflection to celebrate the lives of two very special people who we lost in the last week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for being here. It was truly an honor for me to be able to share this space with so many people who have so many important memories. It was truly a privilege. And so on behalf of CPAWS Yukon and our friends of the Yukon Conservation Society, thank you, Na-Cho. It really is an honor, and we really appreciate it. I'm just going to let everyone know in closing that the video of people's words we're going to send to Tom's family and to his friends and colleagues in Vancouver, so that they can know how much people here in the north have been affected by Tom, and how much his passing means to so many people here. So thank you so much for being here. We are so grateful. Na-Cho.